The StrutFit Show, bringing retail into the future.
Hello and welcome to the StrutFit Show. I'm your host, Ang Nair. I'm also the CEO of StrutFit, where our vision is the same as the vision for this show, to bring retail into the future. Every episode, I'll be joined by a guest who is leading or innovating in some part of the retail spectrum, from design to manufacturing to marketing and even to sales. We'll discuss trends, learnings, and ideas, and really try to figure out what the top performers in your field are doing. Along the way, we'll discover some lessons you can apply to your own career and hopefully even have some fun. All right, let's do it. Hey guys, welcome to the StrutFit Show. The StrutFit Show is where we invite retailers to talk about the industry, and often we get siloed in various different parts, and people have in-depth knowledge about things like marketing and data, such as yourself, and others know about production, and people know about the in-store experience. And we thought, hey, let's bring people together and actually share this knowledge, because I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening, but it's happening in certainly in silos. And if we can do anything to spread the information and help bring retail into the future that way, then we should. So you technically you are not a retailer, but you've worked with a lot of different cool retailers. So yeah, maybe give an intro about yourself and why and how you worked with so many cool retailers.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm a Kiwi entrepreneur who's spent the last sort of almost 10 years in New York and the US. Grew up in Christchurch and sort of fell into technology. I just always loved kind of reading about all these Silicon Valley companies and people building crazy things out of nothing and trying to change the world. There's lots of cool things, I suppose, that you see these days. But when I was going through uni, like no one was doing entrepreneur startup stuff. Like I think Xero was just about to start. 42 Below had just started. TradeMe had just started getting success. So it was kind of like there wasn't a lot of people to look up to. Whereas I think now there's like a really vibrant ecosystem in New Zealand. But yeah, I suppose the big thing getting into software was just the iPhone came out, and I sort of stumbled in with a friend of mine into starting the first iPhone app company in the world back in 2007. And we helped with the jailbreak market, and we hosted all the repositories, which is sort of techie term for like the backend servers for like the unofficial app store before there was an app store. And so it was kind of like the illegitimate app store, but it was cooler because it was illegitimate. So it wasn't policed by the big man, Apple. But yeah.
So you helped make the first app store, basically.
Yeah, well, we had a pretty good run for a while. So I think we launched, the first app was called Search. It was like a spotlight search for your phone. So you could search your contacts and address book. And people forget that like the iPhone launched and it was revolutionary. It was missing like real basic stuff. Like you couldn't take a video through the camera. They're like, what? Like, how is that not possible? You can only take photos. And this is for like a year and a half. The first year and a half of the iPhone, you couldn't take video. The only way to take video was to jailbreak your phone and download our video app called Showtime. And so we launched these apps, and got like millions of people downloading them through the jailbreak market when there was only, 6 to 10 million phones in the world. We had like almost half of them running our apps, which was pretty cool. So we sort of fell into the industry, and they kind of took us to the States a bunch, and exhibited at Macworld and a whole crazy journey. And then it took me a few years to get over there legitimately. And then we just started working with tons of brands, building apps. So like, I think we worked with one of our first brands was like HBO, and then we worked with like CNN, and just you name it. We did about 120 apps in 5 or 6 years. So people like Dreamworks, Sephora. We worked with Target, BP, MAC Cosmetics. People from media, CPG brand, cosmetics, travel, Expedia, telecommunications like T-Mobile. So there's just tons of brands. So we got a lot of exposure to people, and it was a cool thing because we were kind of like at the emergence of mobile, and we were like first to market. So we got a lot of free lunches early on in terms of like really wicked clients that it would be very hard for a small 5-person Kiwi company run by a bunch of mid-20s guys in New Zealand to be able to work with CNN. It's kind of crazy that we were running all CNN's like polling for their mobile apps, all their mobile software, their backend database, their push notifications, and all the analytics for the elections in 2012. And it's like we were like 5-person company or something. I think it was 7-person company. So
That's crazy.
It was pretty cool. I couldn't even get a visa to stay in the country yet. Like we were like our data was being presented like as like the main source of data for like pollings and stuff for the elections. I'm like, this seems crazy that I'm like, I'm like standing at the Republican and the Democratic conventions with like, there's all these crazy cats there like Rudy Giuliani and stuff who obviously, has gone full AWOL since then. But it was pretty fun while it lasted. So yeah, that's kind of the background. And then we got into marketing automation. We raised money from Google. We sold last company Carnival, which was kind of a mobile CRM, to a company called Sailthrough in 2016, and then worked at Sailthrough helping run partnerships and sales and kind of mobile on that kind of side of the company. And then we sold that company in 2018 to CM Group, which is owned by Insight Venture Partners. So yeah, there were a few acquisitions along the way, but we learned a lot about mobile technology and problems with retailers. It's fascinating, all the problems that people have with tech and retail.
Interesting. And now you're at Solve.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about that.
We found out that people have problems and we're here to solve them. That's basically it. And
that's how you came up with the name. Nice.
Yeah, I think Neil came up with the name originally. He was the mastermind. He was the founder of Sailthrough, and he and I never got to work together. When his company acquired my company Carnival, he got pushed out of his own company, and so we thought we were joining forces, and then I had to kind of work with the evil replacement. It was kind of like a missed opportunity. And then a couple of years later, when we sold that Sailthrough to CM Group, he sort of had this idea, and he was like, "Hey, like, do you want to start this with me?" And Nick, another guy from the company who was awesome. So yeah, we jumped at it. And I suppose the big insight we saw was like almost every single retail or e-commerce kind of provider or seller basically goes through the same data maturity curve. And so there's people that are super sophisticated at the high end, which might be like, a company that's invested a lot of money, or it's someone with like a real tech backbone and they've kind of been around for a while. And then there's kind of the new smaller companies that start on like Shopify, and they might be doing like 5 to 30 million in revenue. And those companies, their data lives in third-party systems. The big companies build custom, and everyone sort of goes along this trajectory where the data is living externally. They try and stitch it all together. They try and get insights. They try and drive value from it. Then they realize, hey, I don't own any of this data in-house. I actually don't control it. If I want to move off Shopify to Magento, if I want to move from Klaviyo to MailChimp, it's like a big migration. It's a pain in the ass. And so, like they sort of start building this custom data warehouse. And what we saw with our clients at Sailthrough was like almost every single person was building the exact same thing. But like, what the hell? And they build it really badly because like they build it for one purpose, and then they get it up and running, and everyone's like, hey, I've got this marketing request and I've got this tech request and it needs to integrate into this. And so version 1 never works to what they want. And then they have to rebuild it. And then their CTO quits because he gets poached by Google or some other company. And then the new CTO comes in and says, hey, the old CTO was crap. We got to rebuild it. And so every company, it didn't matter if it was L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, Birchbox, Jet.com, like we just saw them constantly rebuilding their back end, and the back end was like no one wanted to work on that stuff. They want to work on the sexy front end stuff that touches the customer and like it provides a cool experience. And so we were like, surely we could build this once for all these e-commerce companies instead of them building it. Let's build it really amazing so that it can scale from 1 million in revenue to $1 billion without you having to rebuild it. And then the other side of it is let's build it as a product. So like if you're selling shoes as Allbirds, like everyone says they're a tech company, but give me a break. Like you're a shoe company. That's your core bread and butter. You know a lot about what people like about shoes and what they do. And like you building back-end data infrastructure is not going to be a good use of resource and time. And it's going to take you multiple years to get the product that you want. And you're going to have to hire a lot of people, and it's expensive. And so we sort of said, okay, well, let's replace that part. And then the second part is once you have all the data, it's getting the insights. And then we sort of get into like the Allbirds and the Glossier and those types of companies. And 90% of the data requests of like the queries, the analysis, the reports that they're custom building are the same. So we're like, well, if we just build this massive open source library of like, I think we've got 500 different data queries and 12 core reports to date. I can spin up a client save them having to build data infrastructure, and then I can give them all their reporting in like an hour. Like it's nuts. And they'd spend like a year building this custom. So we see a huge opportunity. There's going to be massive economies of scale where you start a new shoe company. I can give you better analysis, better insights than Allbirds has as a $3 billion company for you as a $1 million company. And it's just going to get impossible to compete. You building custom, and people are like, oh, who are your competitors? It's like, our competitors are the in-house development team spending time building a custom data warehouse. It's not even competing with another tech company. So yeah, there's some cool stuff we're doing there.
It's funny. We say the same thing. People are like, what are your competitors? And I'm like, well, there's these other companies doing it in this sort of worse way, but really our competitors is free returns and like people buying multiple pairs of shoes, trying them all on and sending the ones that don't fit back. So we have to be as accurate as them trying on the shoes, and we have to be more convenient. And it's like, that's the real competitor. And it sounds like you've got a similar thing going.
Yeah, and I think the big point of difference of what we're doing at Solve, we're a data warehouse for e-commerce, and we're very heavily focused on people like Shopify customers and Magento customers. But as the real big point of difference that's quite a cool thing is we're almost the first anti-third-party SaaS company. So everyone's a third-party SaaS company. We deploy our whole product on our customer's own AWS account, so they own it. And it's built on underlying open source code. And so we're basically giving away the Tesla, and then we're like the car mechanics maintaining and upgrading it every week. And so it's quite a different proposal to anything else out there. Like we're almost building the anti-Salesforce company in some ways. Like, all these companies that are big companies like Oracle and Salesforce are like slow moving, stodgy. The software's not that great, but it's pretty industry standard. They're massive marketing sales machines. And when you get to renewal time, they often put their prices up, they double their prices, and you're handcuffed. You're like, oh, well, what's my option? I can't move off. It's going to take a year to migrate off Demandware and Salesforce and stuff. And we're saying, hey, well, if you want to staff up a team of engineers, you own the platform. It's sitting on your stack. So we're actually saying the customer owns the platform and they own all the data. And so that's a huge point of difference. We're sort of flipping the switch. The whole industry's going zagging and we're zigging. And we're saying, hey, like, you should own it. That's the strategic long-term vision. And then we're going to be the guys that help you get value out of it.
Epic. So let's talk about some of the problems, I think specifically. So we've talked about the problems at a high level, being like, hey, people have data, they can't sort of map it together. Like, but what does that actually mean for a retailer?
Yeah, so I suppose like if we just look at like shoe retailers as an example, there's a bunch of problems. But once you start stitching data sets together, every platform you use has a slightly different view of that data. And so what is a new customer versus a returning customer? What's last click attribution, first click attribution for a Facebook ad and a Google ad? What Google Analytics says drove revenue compared to Facebook? What Klaviyo says it is an abandoned cart versus Shopify. Like they all have differences. And so anyone that started dealing with all this data, they realize it's almost impossible to get all the platforms to say the same thing. And so you even just like revenue numbers, it's like really hard. And so that's kind of one of the first problem points is like your data is living in these different systems and you can dump it in a data warehouse, but that's why people do a lot of ETLing, export, transform, load, or they might be doing a lot of data cleansing before they can get the data in a state where they can analyze or action it. So that's kind of the first problem is just like you being so reliant, and this is almost every company is being so reliant on third-party systems. The other thing, I suppose, that's interesting, if you go to Allbirds' website, they've got 51 tracking pixels on their website. So your data from a privacy point of view,
51,
just 51. So your data is getting shared with 51 different companies. So they could say, hey, we're privacy first. They're privacy first for their one copy of the data, but they're not privacy first for the 51 other copies they've already given away. And so it's kind of a case of like, the horse is already bolted, the cat's out of the bag. It's like, if you think about GDPR in Europe or California Privacy Act and CPPA in California in the States, like everyone's kind of band-aiding that part of the problem. So the data's not consistent. You're kind of like slightly abusing people's privacy, and I think it'll change. Apple iOS 14 is a big game changer because it's changing the way that you can kind of identify users. and it's sort of diluting the value in some of those third-party systems. So those are kind of early parts. And then the other sort of thing is like the actual action points that people want to drive is they want to acquire high-value customers as cheap as possible. They want those customers to repeat purchase. So they want retention and lifecycle marketing becomes really important, and loyalty. Loyalty is a big issue. And then you start looking at points in that conversion funnel and you think around, returns, multi-size returns, discounting. I think for some of our customers, we see people where, maybe 30 or 40% of their audience will only purchase a pair of shoes on a sale on discount, whereas there might be another 40% that only purchase at full price. So you can start layering all this stuff down. But I suppose when we step back from it, we kind of look at it all as like a sort of life cycle flywheel of a customer. You get awareness of your brand, they come in, they convert, they buy a pair, you hopefully do some life cycle and retention marketing, evangelizing, reviews. Hopefully they evangelize the brand and they might even refer someone, and you start getting that kind of like organic growth. And then hopefully you get it to that repeat purchase. And the repeat purchase rate is one of the biggest things. Like I think everyone looks at LTV to CAC and or lifetime value to cost of acquisition is one of the big ratios. And that ratio is always going to be bad if you can't get people to come around that flywheel. And if they come around a second time, your LTV to CAC ratio goes up and the profitability of the whole company changes. So repeat purchase is one of the biggest things I think most of these people struggle with, I would say. A lot of stuff there.
And in terms,
give me a lot of stuff.
Well, let's drill down on the repeat purchases.
Yeah.
How are what's the difference between other platforms sort of tracking this information versus what you guys see? Is there quite a big difference? So
let's
start there.
A point of difference, since we don't own the platform, the customer owns it, it's deployed on their stack. They become the primary collector of their own data. And so pretty much most companies don't collect the data directly themselves. Their data is collected through Google Analytics and Klaviyo and Shopify and, blah, blah, blah. And so they're always getting the exhaust out of those platforms. And sometimes that data is rolled up, sometimes it's aggregate, sometimes it's just processed. And so we give our clients a tool to basically collect all the data raw. So they collect everything. So everything that happens on their website, email, ads, they collect that directly. And so since they've got the first party relationship with their customer, they can generally collect almost 5 to 10 times more raw data than if they were collecting it through third party systems. So the first point is you should collect the data directly yourself. Then there are also less issues with iOS 14 and third-party cookie blockers because it's direct relationship first-party data with your own customer. And so that's kind of the foundational layer, is like if people can collect their own data rather than exporting it out of all these different SaaS vendors, you can actually collect higher quality data and a higher quantity of data. And literally some clients, we're collecting 5 to it's even 10 times more data in terms of raw data. Hosting of data, like storage costs, is really cheap. It's minimal amount of money. So it's like, let's collect it all. And then in hindsight, if you have a question that you didn't think about, we can go back and analyze it a year ago, or, figure out what lifetime value is by first product purchase, or you can always go backwards, but it starts by collecting high quality data directly. So I'd say that's kind of the first step. If people aren't doing that and they're relying on these third party systems, then it's a different equation, because then a large part is like getting the data into one view and unifying into a single view of a customer. That's kind of like the first step, which is a problem, And so that's probably the first step of the process. Does that make sense?
Interesting. I don't know if you saw. Yeah, that made sense. I tagged. We did the podcast recently with Alex Gino from who's head of customer research from Zappos, and he was talking about how they've spent big on being able to unify that data, because they have so much data, right? They do billions of dollars of footwear sales a year, and they're like, he's like, yeah, like if I'm leading customer research, which he is, he's like, we need to understand that the same. For example, I think you guys were talking about how you have customers, some of your retailers have customers who would purchase a product at a full price, but then you're showing them 10% off, newsletters or whatever. Sign up for this newsletter, get 10% off, and it's like, well, that customer was going to purchase anyway. You didn't. Yeah. You just cut 10% off your fucking profit margin, right?
Yeah. Well, how many of your friends or you yourself how many times have you gone to a website and you've gone to purchase, you're an existing customer, and you're like, wait a second, I'll sign up with a fake email address or my second email address or my work one so I can get the 10% off code as a new customer. So it's just like nuts. And so even like if you're clicking with
I will not admit to having done that.
Not with your own clients, I get it, but competitive brands. But yeah, it pisses people off as well, because you're like, the worst thing is getting a modal pop up when you're going to do something, and maybe it doesn't give you a discount. It's just like, subscribe to our newsletter, and they're like, I'm already a subscriber. Stop annoying me. So I think if you collect that data, like I think on average, we're increasing the number of first-party identified browsing sessions for our customers about 87%. And so that's like doubling the top of the funnel of first-party browsing sessions. So if you think about it another way, if I go to Nike, probably half or more of the people that put something in their shopping cart on Nike.com are logged out. And so if they're using Shopify or Klaviyo or Magento or these types of products, they will not identify that user if they're logged out. And so that's like another thing. If you don't know they're logged in, you obviously can't trigger the abandoned cart email, but you also can't like make sure the experience is good. And so you might do that browser pop-up that's totally annoying, and it's popping up on every page, or it's popping up on first visit when you're like, this is a loyal customer that's bought 10 pairs of Air Force Ones. Why am I trying to say, hey, have you heard about Air Force Ones? You're like, yeah, of course I have. Like, I'm like the biggest Air Force One collector, So I think it almost comes back a lot to Neil's old company at Sell Through, which was like one-to-one personalization. Like, people are sitting on a treasure trove of first-party data. It's a treasure trove, and yet everyone's sort of looking at these things of like advertising more on Facebook and trying to acquire third-party data to augment their data because they think it's going to give them insights and more value. And they don't realize that the most valuable data is the data they already could know about their own customers. The first-party data they collect directly is a far more rich data set than anything they're going to get third-party. So, yeah, if you know a lot more about your customer, you can build better customer experiences, make the website better, more personalized, the email marketing more personalized. It's just like flow-on effects across the board. So I think the next generation of shoe companies and retail companies that are using these types of technologies where they're collecting the data directly raw and they're not trying to like spend all their time building complex data warehouses to unify all the data, like I think these people are going to move a lot faster. And the Allbirds are kind of like the tip of the iceberg. They're a great poster boy or poster girl of like high growth D2C, but that's like par for the course now. That's the benchmark.
Interesting. So let's talk about what you can do. I'm interested to see what you can do once with like email marketing, because we've thought about, I don't think we've actually spoken about this, but with StrutFit, where we have people's actual measurement data, think about when you get to the end of a season and you're like, hey, post, end of season sale, here's all these shoes. What if you could actually send a customer an email, be like, hey, these are shoes which we know are actually going to fit you based on your measurements. So now we're only giving you actually very relevant and very personalized emails. Is that kind of personalization possible with Solve, and is that what you're trying to enable?
Definitely. Everything comes back to data. Like the quality of the data can feed into marketing, into acquisition, retention, like all sorts of stuff, customer experience. So yeah, like if you're sitting on really good data, when you think about it, this stuff is all stuff that people dream of, but it's actually not that hard to do. And so I think like when you start thinking about sizing, if you know someone's size, why advertise them a sale when their size is out of stock? That's like crazy. It's just going to frustrate them and come into the sale and they're going to go like, oh, there's none in my size. Like it's just ridiculous. Their size, all their purchase history. And it's actually richer than that. So what we do ourselves with our data platform is we build up an inferred interest profile on each customer. And so this is based on what they look for: search, click, purchase, open emails, see ads. And so if they could search for gumboots, and Nike doesn't sell gumboots, but would store that against their profile. And then we could do a query and say, find people that have a high likelihood or high purchase intent at gumboots. And we see, hey, and search for gumboots 3 times on Nike.com in the last 6 months. Probably wants a pair of gumboots. The only problem now is like we didn't sell him some, and so he might have bought some Reebok gumboots. Hypothetical. So I'm just talking about like wish list of like gumboot evolution. But yeah, so they're going to be the new Yeezys, I'm telling you. the new Yeezys, gumboots.
For farmers in New Zealand.
Yeah, for farmers. Farmers will be like the new Gap. So building up that inferred interest program, it's not even just knowing what they purchase, because someone might not have purchased, but they've given you all this data. They've clicked on the same size shoe like 20 times. They've looked at something. And so, yeah, you could totally create a segment, run a sale, or even like end of season and say, hey, look, there's these items are still available in your sizing, or, whatever it might be. So, yeah, totally easy to do. And you should be doing it. You should be personalizing those emails with content that's relevant to that individual customer. And that to be honest, that's on the marketing side, that's where sale through was pretty amazing. They were one-to-one personalization.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So what sort of personalization did you guys achieve, and maybe what were some of the cool campaigns?
So I suppose like one of the cool things we did before we left that Nick, our co-founder, led was we did forward-looking lookalike audiences in Facebook. So when you run a Facebook lookalike audience, you take a pool of users that say maybe high value, the people that have purchased $300 of shoes in the last 30 days or 3 months or whatever. And you say, hey, these are our best customers. They're our gold tier. Let's take that audience. We'll download as a CSV from our marketing tool, from Shopify or whatever. And then we'll upload that into Facebook. Hopefully they're one-way hashing the email addresses and not passing around people's private data everywhere. But they put it into Facebook, and then Facebook runs this and says, look for people that look like this. And the only problem, it's hugely successful. It's kind of like the foundation of a lot of Facebook's success, of how they've driven revenue and how people use their platform. But that lookalike is backwards looking. So think about this for a sec. Ang goes out, buys a new pair of Yeezys last week. We say, okay, let's find people that look like Ang. Wait a second. We're going to find people that just bought a pair of Yeezys, which we're trying to sell Yeezys. Don't we want to find the people that are about to buy a pair of Yeezys, not the people? Because if Ang's just bought a pair, he's just forked out like $800 for a pair of, 700s or something crazy. Who would do such a thing? But yeah, and obviously for your co-founders, obviously we're in Yeezys there. But
nice.
But it's crazy. So you're getting people that have already purchased. They might not be ready to purchase another pair of shoes for 6 months or 12 months. And so what we did is we took all this first party data and we ran machine learning and prediction algorithms. And we said, let's take everything we know about the customer, what they did leading up to that purchase, what were the signal intent? Maybe they're like looking around, they're searching, they're opening emails more, they're clicking on things, there's certain demographic, they spent this much time between their last sale and this sale. And so we can take all that data, characteristics, event data, page view data, and then we run the model and we say, hey, let's find people that are likely to purchase in the next 30 days. And so we had one of our highest performing algorithms was a likely to purchase next 7-day algorithm. We ran that over about 6 years, a 5-year period. So the algorithm was learning. We ran it against 700 million people, and
wow.
We ran it with control groups with a 96.1% accuracy against control groups. So it was amazing. It actually worked. And we actually ended up winning the Facebook Spotlight Award for personalization based on this. And so what that meant was like, we're not finding Ang, we're finding Ang 2 weeks ago before he made the purchase. And so running that algorithm into Facebook, we ran it with Rent the Runway, which is a really cool subscription and kind of like high-end clothing rental company where you can get like a Tom Ford suit for a wedding and you don't have to buy it because you're just renting it. They, from memory, we increased LTV by about 30% of the customers they acquired, and we basically reduced cost of acquisition massively. And so we're getting cheaper users that spent more. So huge impact to the business on their advertising. And we ran a big case study. I think it was done with Gartner, and we did one with Business Insider on it. But that was like kind of one of the poster childs of like using high quality data to then kind of acquire users. So that's sort of one example. The other example would be like, just personalizing. You go to Nike.com, and my wife Rose goes to Nike.com. She's not interested in Air Jordans. Like she might be looking at like, yoga pants or whatever it might be. Yet we go to Nike.com and we see the exact same website. Doesn't that sound crazy? And it's almost like the retailers are still stuck in this like old school news publishing mentality of like, I'm the editor of my website. It's like, come on, get off the ego train. Like every customer is unique. What Ang likes, the fact that he's wearing his pink StrutFit t-shirt represent, and I'm wearing like like this, my preppy white shirt and looking all corporate, like we might want completely different things when we go to the site.
Yeah.
So why don't we tailor at least parts of the site to stuff that you're more likely to be interested in? If I've read 50 Jacinda articles and you've read 50 Donald Trump articles, I won't put that word out there, but because I know you probably won't be reading. But then maybe serve you another one of those ones. You don't want to create a full echo chamber, but it's different. Like it's crazy, like that Facebook got so advanced feeding the echo chamber with all the bad side for politics, but yet retailers don't even do a little bit, even though we know from a data point of view that personalizing communications, website advertising, customer experience yields massive results. Don't send me stuff about women's high heels. Send me like men's Yeezy and Air Jordans. I'm my wife and a couple of people on my team at my old company, Kelly, she was getting Under Armour emails for men's jock straps. Not joking. Under Armour was sending her men's jock straps.
Come on.
And she's like, I literally signed up and said I'm a woman, and yet it's because they just send out the same email to everyone. They don't even do segmentation, let alone personalization. So I think the bar's pretty low for a lot of people in this area. Like I think they mean well. A lot of people have got great products, great brands, but like I think they're getting let down by the technology because in their mind they're like, we're using lots of third-party SaaS, and then we've got to build everything custom ourselves. And you're like, there must be a better way. So. And StrutFit's doing that as well. Like you guys are helping with, the fact that there's so much multi-size returning and people get, sizing is such a big problem. And yet people haven't really fixed it until now, which is crazy.
Yep. Until now. So the future's looking good. The future's looking good for data and for sizing, it seems.
Yeah. It's a good time. How many pairs
What are some of the easy wins?
I'll flip the question onto you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to flip the question onto you. How many pairs of shoes have you returned in the last 2 years?
I don't actually buy that many shoes. But that's the reason. Like, but that's the reason. Was like, I can't be bothered with returns. Like, getting three sizes of the same shoe and trying them all on and then returning the ones that don't fit. Like, that's too much hassle for me. So I just don't even shop online. Until StrutFit, and now I'm actually starting to shop with the retailers that use us because I'm like, cool, I know it's gonna fit, and now the convenience factor is like ticked. Because right now it's like cool, convenient to buy, but there's no guarantee it'll fit, and most of the time it doesn't fit. Not most of the time, but 30% return rates, or Zappos has 50% return rates.
It's crazy.
It's not actually. It's wild.
People don't realize the layers of problems with this. And like we sat down with clients recently and they're like, oh, this is a nice to have. You're like, you kidding me? When someone gets something, like my first 3 pairs of Allbirds, I bought a pair for myself. I bought a pair for an investor of mine who was the co-founder of Discord, Eros. Shout out to him. He's done pretty well out in San Francisco. Just casual $10 billion company is his last company. But yeah, I bought a pair for him and his wife as a gift. And I bought a pair for my brother. So I bought 3 purchases of Allbirds. None of them fit. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, are you kidding me? This is early days of Allbirds. I think maybe their sizing's got better, so I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt, but like crazy. So I bought like 3 orders and all of them didn't fit. I returned 2 of them. One of them was too hard to return. Like, I'm not going to tell Eros. I just bought them another pair and sent them another pair out. But they should have said, what the hell? This guy's sending like multiple sizes of the same exact shoe to one person's house. Like, maybe there's a sizing issue. It might not be, but like, let's reach out and ask him. So that was a really bad experience. I had Yeezy 1 turtle doves, which I love, but they're like really basic. I'm a size 10. I bought a size 10 and the 350s when they came out. Obviously, this is a well-worn 350. I'm not a put on a mantelpiece type person, but this is crazy. So I bought my. You sort of think, okay, Adidas, huge company, they're going to do everything well. I get my next one, I'm a size 10 and Yeezy 350s. Next one come out, I'm like, oh my God, I can't even fit my toes in it. And it's both the sizing and length, and it was a sizing and like they've done this thing with the design of the shoe where the toe's really low, it's not very high. And so I'm not like a big person, but I've literally got blisters. I feel like I need to show you my feet to prove that I've got blisters from wearing Yeezys. I feel like
I'll take your word for it.
No, is this going to be the first time on a podcast where It's like I'm on a shoe. This is a shoe podcast. Like, don't I need to do this? I feel like I need to do this.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you could see this, but like,
I don't think the quality is not that good anyway. But let's see.
Okay. I don't think we can do it. It's too hard. But like, it's crazy. I've actually got blisters on my feet from the shoes not working because I was like, fuck, I can't be asked sending them back, which is crazy. So that's Adidas and Allbirds, two of the most successful companies.
Yeah.
So from their point of view, if I send it back, they're like, oh, there's a cost of shipping, there's a cost of reprocessing. Suddenly that becomes unprofitable as an order. And from my point of view, it's a really bad customer experience, and you've just like tarnished what is like, I love Adidas, I love, Allbirds, and now suddenly I've got like this sort of perception of them not really knowing what they're doing, and I'm like kind of pissed off because I've just like lost a month because I've had to like make it down to the post shop and send them back, and then it's taken another 2 weeks to get the right size back, and then it's not in stock, and the Allbirds ones took like 2 months or something. So it's just like they don't realize that they've turned an evangelist to a detractor. Like they've gone from an NPS score of like 10 to like an NPS score of like 5 or 4, and so like this is a problem. They need to fix that. So I think sizing is a huge issue that people don't realize all the layers of it, of like all the problems it creates. They just think, oh yeah, there's a cost of it. 20% return rate, that's a cost of doing business, and we just make sure we got high margins. They don't realize they're actually creating bad customer experiences as well. So I'm evangelizing your product.
For sure. A negative. I appreciate it. The negative customer experience is real. Like for the Adidases and now for the Allbirds, who are a decent brand level with it, they can afford to kind of take that brand hit. But if I'm shopping online, I've been targeted with an ad, which is, they're trying to target new people, right? So you see these new ads, you're like, cool, let me click on this shoe. And if I'm buying a shoe from a company I haven't heard of before, and I get it and it doesn't fit, and it's like, can I be bothered with the return? Is it just going to sit under my desk? But like, I'm certainly not going to purchase again. And it's like, the cost is so much higher for these smaller brands, which just don't have that brand recognition. It's like, you can't afford to be losing customers like this. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's so nuts. It's like, cost of acquisition, and yet they're so happy to put more money into Facebook advertising. It's just crazy. And yet Facebook's, attribution model is like totally bogus. They have no idea. They're totally over attributing massively. And yet,
how much are they over attributing by?
Really depends on the type of ad. I suppose like the big caveat I'd put is like, if you're just looking at the first purchase, a lot of Facebook campaigns are not ROI positive. They might say they're driving 3x ROAS, but like what we're seeing is on a 7-day click attribution without the views. They might be actually doing like a 1 to 1.5 instead of 3. So quite often we're seeing just on a click basis without the impressions, which Facebook won't obviously give you the data on who they've seen. But just even comparing 7-day click to their attribution model, someone might have come in and seen 10 Google ads, one Facebook, another 10 Google ads, and then they purchase. So first click attributions, Google, last click attributions, Google, Facebook's in the middle, and Facebook will say, we drove that purchase. And it's like, what the hell? Okay, well, you are 1/11th of the decision factor. So maybe you're like 10% at a max, whatever. So I think there's a big problem because it's not just over attributing looking at their data. Unless you got a complete view of all your ads, Google, Facebook, affiliate, etc., organic, email, like unless you have that full global universal view, you're going to be double counting across sources, and you need to see multi-touch for every order. And so we do that out of the box. But like, I would say, on average, it's over 100%. We see some campaigns that it's over 300%.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's nuts. Like I could show you data where like sometimes it's like, we've got a really good one we use in our kind of case study stuff where someone came in, Facebook said, we drove this purchase. I'm like, okay, well, I'm tracking that same purchase. And luckily this person clicked on the ad. It's not an impression. And so I can see where they came into the website. And then I look at the person's profile and I'm like, wait a second, I've known this person for 6 months. They're a previous customer. So Facebook said they acquired a new customer, but they're actually an existing customer. And then they came in, they saw the Facebook ad that Facebook said we drove a purchase. And then a week later, they came in through a Bing ad, which we didn't even know Bing still existed. But Bing for the win as their new slang sort of tagline. Bing for the win. Bing drove the last click attribution, drove the person clicked on it and they purchased from that session. So Facebook's taken credit for the ad, for the actual purchase when they're an existing customer and Bing drove the actual transaction. So it's just littered with these kind of examples. But at the end of the day, it's very hard to audit the performance in Facebook. I'm not telling clients to turn Facebook off. It's still probably the best, marketing channel to do at scale targeting of customers. And it's easy to buy, easy to target. So it's a great channel. But, the flip side, I'm not hating on Facebook because I'm actually saying, hey, you shouldn't just be looking at the first purchase. What happens if you get a 0.5 return on ad spend number? You spend 100 grand, you only get 50 grand in purchases. You'd be like, let's turn off that campaign. But what happens if those 50 grand transactions, they come back and buy every month, or they end up having like an LTV of $500? Suddenly, like the true ROAS on acquiring that customer is actually like 6 to 10 times. So there's kind of two parts to it. One is the first initial purchase of like attribution is a big problem, and we're sort of solving that. And it's looking across everything, and one sliced, siloed view of just looking at Facebook and relying on their data is crazy that people are operating. They're like flying blind in a black box and like just shelling out money, just like straight. So
it makes sense though, because like with Facebook doesn't know any better. They're like, cool, from our view, they've clicked on the ad, they've made a purchase. Yeah. Right. But you have all the data. So you're like, actually, we can see that Google
don't know any better. Well, I mean, they did send out an email a month ago that said, hey, due to Apple iOS 14, you may see all your revenue and attribution and ROAS numbers significantly decline. You're like,
okay, like, maybe they do know better.
And so now they're like estimating, like they're trying to get everyone to integrate with their CAPI, which is their campaign conversion API, which is great. Like, and again, I'm not actually knocking on Facebook because I think it's a great channel. But I think the different way of looking at the data is not looking at the ROAS on first purchase, but is saying that's one component. And now let's look at the quality of the user that you acquired. Did they come back, or are they one and done? Did they just return the item? Like Facebook's not getting the returns process. So some of those numbers, they're over attributing as well. So again, I'm not actually like Facebook. We actually might get our clients to spend more on Facebook, but they're spending in a completely different way because they're well informed. So I think that's kind of one of the problems that people are facing is like, it's just easy to spend money the same way they've always spent. And that's kind of like when companies like yours, StrutFit or Solve come out, like, and you do, or Sailthrough, you come and do something different. It's hard because you kind of have to re-educate people. And it's almost like they're sort of programmed to the old model, and then they see something new and it's like, okay, well, even the attribution stuff, you got to think about it differently. Like, I think Klaviyo's abandoned cart attribution's done on either a 5-day or a 7-day click on the email. And it's like majority of people, if that email actually drove the transaction, they're going to convert within 24 to 48 hours. And probably 70% of the attribution is going to be within those first day or two anyway. But like 7 days is a pretty big window, like to say, hey, this person definitely converted off this email, like 7 days later. It's like, what happens if they browse the site 10 times and saw 4 ads after seeing that email? Like there's so many problems. I think the way people are looking at data is completely wrong, but it's hard. It's hard in their minds to do anything different or present it in a simple way that they can kind of action and understand. And I think that's on us. That's on companies like yours and mine. Like it's on the new generation of companies to help solve that problem, which is there's a lot of data out there, and it's hard to prove what's right and what's wrong, and actually give context or like quality to how to action it.
Yeah. So what are the on actioning it? I might be a retailer looking at this and being like, oh, this sounds really good. But we don't have the internal expertise to get this done, or like it's going to cost too much, like it's going to take too long to get up and running. On someone running Shopify, I'm thinking about some of our retailers now who are on Shopify. Like how easy is it for them to get up and going, and how quickly would they see a return on the investment?
Yeah, so it's about 1 to 2 hours of their time. And then if they're on Shopify and something like Klaviyo, like we could get largely set up in 1 day. We generally give it a few days. We do a historical import of all their previous data, and we sort of make sure that we've got Facebook ID, Business ID, Google Business ID, Shopify ID, and just requesting access, they just press accept. So their 1 hour of time is like them clicking accept and giving us the IDs. And then the only other big thing is we do a review of the UTMs. Most people have pretty bad UTM tracking codes.
What is UTM?
UTM is like this kind of universal, basically code for tracking ad campaigns. And so basically you use UTM on a campaign it's called Urchin Tracking Module, I think, from memory. And basically you attach it to a campaign, and then when someone hits your website, you can see the UTM of where they came from. So if you don't have those set up, you just see that they came from Google or they came from Facebook. And so if we have the campaign name, we say, hey, they came from the August, StrutFit campaign, holiday campaign, or whatever it is. And so then when we do the analysis, we can break down each one of those by those individual campaigns, and you're not just getting the kind of broad bucket channel or provider names. So once you sort of get those in a good structure, it means that all the traffic that hits your site, you're suddenly like sitting on much better data to actually see what's going well. And so this is what is a little bit crazy, is like when we go to companies that are maybe like 3 to 10 million in revenue, some even at 20 to 30 million in revenue, and then you go and look at the UTM structure, and I suppose from like the output side of what you actually see, we'll download a list of every purchase, and if it has a UTM code against it of like what drove the purchase, like what drove that last browsing session that resulted in a purchase. And so we'll just see it, and there'll be like UTM codes missing, and there'll be duplicates, and there'll be like inconsistencies. And so, and then some people use Facebook's automatic tagging. And the problem with that is sometimes it'll roll up multiple campaigns into one hierarchy. And so we'll just say Facebook campaign. And you're like, okay. And so once it comes into your site like that, it's almost impossible to retroactively split it out and say this was the August holiday campaign, this was the StrutFit 10% discount campaign, and this was, and so that's often a common problem. But yeah, we can generally get set up from a basic point of view same day, and then we can be doing reporting. The beauty of what we do is we're having massive economies of scale. Since we're the data warehouse, we structure all the data in the same way, and then it means we can analyze the data in the same way. So it means if I sign a shoe company A, all the analysis I do can then be applied to shoe company B. And so as we get bigger, every week, every month, we're building more and more analysis reports, machine learning, and it can be applied across every company. So within a year, we'll probably have like the largest online collection of data queries that are available to e-commerce companies, which is pretty awesome. So you start getting, like, it means every time you sign a new customer, that customer is getting access to basically more sophistication that is automated, that they don't have to do themselves, that we do for them and help them. So we generally can show a path to positive ROI within the first month, and we'll do a 1 month recap on their data, which is pretty cool. They may not, I'd say on average, most clients, we can prove that we're ROI positive, that we're actually generating more money than the contract value within 3 months, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. You want to talk briefly about how you did that with abandoned cart?
Yeah. So the abandoned cart thing's in a couple of stages. So when you go to Shopify or Magento or Klaviyo and you use their abandoned cart feature, which is great. Abandoned cart's one of the, and just to be clear, this is abandoned cart emails to recover people that have abandoned carts and try and get them to convert. And so abandoned cart emails, you can do in multiple ways. There's layers to this. So most people might do one email. The best sort of practice is probably to do multiple and to then show the cart in there, have it linked to the right cart. Then you're going to get higher conversion rate. If they don't reply to that, maybe send a second one. If you've got a really good understanding of acquisition costs, you might say, well, to acquire a new customer is going to be $30. So let's give them a $10 coupon. If they don't convert on the second, we'll send a third one. So there's lots of email tactics around it. But at the bare bones of it is someone adds something to their cart and you think, okay, if they don't convert, we'll send them an email and hopefully they'll convert off the email. Those emails traditionally can convert, I would say out of the box, a lot of people are getting them converting at like 1 or 2%. I would say a lot of our clients are seeing like, 6 to 10% conversion rate. So we're increasing it a lot. I'd say our first 2 shoe customers, we tripled the conversion rate as a percentage of total revenue. So from 2 to like almost 7%, which was pretty awesome. And this is just free money. You set it up and it forgets. and to explain the difference of how we're approaching this, if you add something to you go to Allbirds, just keep picking on Allbirds, even though they're a great company. I love Allbirds, but I'm going to pick on them as an example. So they had traditionally used Shopify. I think they may have built custom now, but they used Shopify originally. If you add something to your cart on Allbirds, you don't get the email. If you go to the checkout screen, you still don't get the email. You need to be logged in. And so everyone that goes to a shopping experience and adds something to their shopping cart will not get an abandoned cart email unless they're logged in. And the second step is they have to make it to the checkout screen. So they need to be logged in and check out. And so the Klaviyo, Magento, and Shopify abandoned cart is technically a logged in abandoned checkout email. It's not a abandoned cart email.
So even if I have an account, I've signed up, but I'm just not logged in because my cookies were deleted or some shit.
You're anonymous. You're anonymous to those platforms.
Huh.
Yeah. So they're missing probably twice the top of the funnel. And so we basically store anonymous data against anonymous profile, and then we look for signals. We're agnostic for identity resolution. Someone comes in off a SHA-256, like a hashed email address. They click on an email, but they're logged out, sign up for a newsletter, buy something. We don't care how we identify them. We just look for signals. And when we see the signal, we match it and we can backfill all that anonymous data. And so if someone's browsing and they're logged out, we see them as a identified person. We know they're a customer. We can trigger that email. And so we're seeing twice as many people, and we forward them into, say, Klaviyo or Iterable, one of those email tools, and we just replace the way that they identify the customer. So we give them twice as much top of the funnel, and then if they're not logged in, they might not be as higher purchase intent as a category of people, but they're still valuable. And so with New Republic shoes,
and there's probably a lot more of them, right?
Yeah, there's a lot more. So New Republic, I think in our first month, we saw their incremental abandoned cart recovery revenue increase by 31%, and that's month one working with them. So it's pretty cool. Like if you've got, like if a company's doing 5 to 10 million upwards or tens of millions in revenue, it's like meaningful revenue. You should be doing we should be able to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars, definitely north of $100,000 of incremental revenue of leaky. You think of it like a leaky bucket. We're putting some plasters on the holes. And it's sort of like, let's not keep acquiring more customers. Let's fix some of these holes before we pour more water in the bucket that has no bottom, basically. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. So we're doing true abandoned cart, and we don't mind if someone's logged in or logged out, whereas third-party companies are doing abandoned logged in checkout, which is lower down the funnel. We're doing higher up the funnel. So yeah, free money.
Wow.
Basically the summary. Yeah, free money. Like people are just losing revenue.
If I'm a retailer who's like, cool, I want some of this free money, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Through our site, but guy@solve.io, or through my friend Ang, runs a very cool shoe sizing company called StrutFit. Referral code. No, we don't have a referral code. I'll definitely take Ang out for a nice dinner or something if he gives me some kind of referral. But yeah, we're just keen to chat to people. We're very transparent about all the stuff we can do, and we can show you a lot of it before people buy as well, so they can kind of see the types of data they'll be getting. And so I think we're onto something pretty cool. It's definitely the most excited I've been about the future of a company. I think there's a lot of potential in what we're doing to build something really big. So yeah, fingers crossed, lots of work to do, but yeah, it's cool.
Sounds epic, man. I think for a lot of people who've been listening, there's a lot of gold in here. And also for a lot of, like we find this in shoe sizing as well. Like we'll talk to retailers and we're like, hey, what about this thing? And they'll be like, oh, we didn't know that. And I think for a lot of retailers, it's going to be this. It's like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And this will be showing them like, hey, here's some questions you should be asking. And, is your UTM tag set up correctly? Like, is it even properly attributing to anything? You just don't know what you don't know. And I think this will open a lot of minds for people, and hopefully they can take some action on it.
Yeah, I would say like two final parting points for shoe companies specifically. Multi-size returns, crazy. It's crazy that people are ordering two shoes exactly the same in different sizes, and the company's not doing anything about it. And so what we saw with our friends at New Republic and their previous company, Buck Mason, they sort of implemented this well. Was like, if someone adds two shoes to the cart, either pre or post checkout, just say, hey, like, do you know that this, I saw you added a size 10 and 11. These shoes normally run large. If you're normally a size 10, I'd suggest you getting 11. refer to our, StrutFit and do your shoe sizing properly, we can see if they've used StrutFit or not before that, so we can refer them back to it. But like just doing that, you could decrease we've seen this customer decrease their multi-size returns by like 50% in the last 3 months. They're doing multiple tactics. So this isn't just all like solve creating stuff. It's them using tactics and sort of doing this stuff. But it's like, that's a great thing to be able to do. And then the other thing I really love doing with shoe companies is looking at lifetime value based on their first product purchase. So then if you've got a lot of SKUs of different shoes, you can say, well, this shoe drives 3 times higher repeat purchase than if they buy this sandal. So the sandal's a sort of leaky product. People come in, but then they don't repeat purchase. They either don't like it or they go buy something else or they're not loyal. There's a problem there. And so we look at like every single SKU, and when we say, okay, well, if these have got high LTV, maybe we should be pushing people to buy these as their first product purchase. And then we show every single shoe they're likely to buy afterwards. So if someone buys a pink pair of slippers, who knows? Maybe their next shoe is a white pair of high tops. And we can say, hey, 30% of people historically have gone on to purchase this next. So we have basically a product LTV report that we do for shoes. And you can literally look at one product and then see like the whole journey of every single sort of like kind of spread out family tree of like all the decisions people make after buying that. And then as they go down the tree, they can see how the LTV changes, the likelihood of repeat purchase and retention. So these kind of things are like pretty easy to do. And you can factor profitability into it as well. So you could even say like the shoe is not very profitable. And then you should be feeding that data into your actual inventory decisions of what products to reorder. And we look at things like sales velocity as well, like how quickly is a shoe selling out. A lot of shoe companies are buying their next order of inventory and they don't even look at how fast they sold a shoe. So they look at high top and slippers and they say, we sold 10,000 units of both. And they don't say, well, the 10,000 units took 4 months to sell this one, and this one sold out in a week. They don't go, well, what's the prediction of the likelihood if we had unlimited stock over a 3-month period? How much could we have sold of this? Maybe we should be ordering 30,000 units of this and 5,000 units of this. So there's a lot of stuff. This data doesn't just feed into customer experience, marketing, retention, acquisition. It also feeds into what products you're building and also what your inventory and kind of like inventory management and predictions of kind of op planning. Lots of stuff to take in, but yeah, there's lots of things you can do. World is your oyster if you've got a shoe company.
Fantastic. Well, if I ever start a shoe company, then I know which platform I'll be using.
I'll come join you. We'll start it together. We'll start a shoe company. I like
That'll
it.
be dope. Good stuff. All right, man. Thanks for jumping on, and look forward to talking more in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The StrutFit Show. I've been your host, Ang Nair. And if you enjoyed it, if you found some parts where you were like, this has added some value to my life, then please share it with a few other people that you think would also value this information or that snippet. And when they like it as much as you did, I'm sure they'll thank you. If you're interested in what we're doing at StrutFit, head to our website at www.strut.fit to learn more and get in touch with us. If you want to get in contact with me directly, you can reach me at ang@strut.fit. Alright, that's all folks. Till next time, take care.